What's up, guys? Here we are. Good morning, at least for us here in the United States. Welcome to Implausible Nature for our Caffeine and Crusade. I've got my caffeine right here. Bob is drinking his caffeine. And yeah, so it's uh it's been interesting since the last time we had a Caffeine Crusade. We've got Worlds this weekend, so a lot of hype around that. We've got uh, the some reveals. We'll talk about those. I want to get Bob's thoughts on those. I streamed on live on Friday, so you guys heard my thoughts, but I want to hear Bob's thoughts. Um, and yeah, and then also I want to talk about because I dropped the ball and didn't do much content while I was off playing 40K in the mountains, and I apologize for that, guys. It was I don't know what it was this time. I was just exhausted the whole time, and between doing shorts for um, my hobby stream, um, and making sure I got some painting done so I didn't break my streak. We're up to day 28 today. I got a lot done last night. That Helix guy's almost done, so stay tuned for today's episode on that. Um, so yeah, so we got a lot to talk about today. Real quick too, I want to plug our one of our partners, Baron of Dice. He's got some really great deals going on right now, leading up to Black Friday next week. So make sure that you guys check out all the deals that he has. I think he has free shipping, I want to say. So so yeah, make sure to check out baronofdice.com. Use discount code IN40K so you guys can save some money and support us at the same time. And I used my implausible nature dice all weekend. I used both the red dice and the black dice, and they were rolling hot. There was a few times when I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn with anything, but I believe in that game I made save after save after save, so it made up for it in the fact that I wouldn't die. So um, so yeah, uh, you alive there, Bob?
Yep, I'm here. I'm alive.
Bob started off this morning with a message to me that said, "So this is what pain feels like."
Yes.
Bob's
I
been
was
working a
like,
long,
oh,
long hours at work. So,
oh, God, I love those 16-hour days.
yep.
Yep.
Thankfully, the bank is only open for 9 hours, so I couldn't possibly work a 16-hour day. So, but anyway, yeah. So let's kick it off and talk about my experience at the in the mountains playing. I played 4 games. I won them all. Now, to preface that, like obviously this wasn't a tournament or anything. This is just games among my friends. My friends are pretty competitive though. One of those games was against a new player, so kind of toss that one out because he's still new, he's still getting used to it. He was playing someone else's army, so um, but it was Chaos Knights, which are pretty deadly. So even in the hands of a new player, he still popped several of my tanks. Um, so yeah. So let's take a look at ye old list here. So I'll go through it. I've got I'm gonna have to scroll just because of the way the display is on it. But obviously I got High Marshal Helbrecht. He's my warlord, the Emperor's champion, in there as well. The lieutenant with combi weapon. I put him in there for the rerolls of 1 to wound on a specific objective. Um, Seems like a good ability. Plus, he's got lone operative. He can just kind of hang out in a corner somewhere and protect us from deep strike, which was useful in a couple games. Um, and then I've got two 10-man Primaris Crusader squads armed for melee. And then I have two 5-man Assault Intercessor squads armed for melee, obviously, with two plasma pistols and a power fist on each sergeant. Um, Then, of course, I have the requisite infiltrator squad that we pretty much need to take to help protect our backfield, do things for us. Um, Two Primaris Sword Bro squads, full Gucci kit on them. Helbricht and the Emperor's Champion are attached to those two guys. A scout squad with a couple shotguns, a heavy bolter, and a sniper rifle. A five-man Terminator squad with a missile launcher. Two Lancers, Vindicator, and two Impulsors. So obviously the Sword Bros are riding in the Impulsors. I put the Terminators in Deep Strike every game. And also every game, I forgot completely about their teleport homer ability. So that was fun. Not that it's like a super useful thing to have, but it's one of those things you got to remember your rules, right? I feel like I did pretty good remembering the rest of my rules though, so that was good at least. Um, so yeah, so that's the list. Um, Bob, I think I've showed you this list before. What are your thoughts on it before I talk about my experience with it?
Yeah, I thought it's a pretty balanced list. I take a little bit more redundancy than you do, but I think it's an overall really balanced list. And I think you sent it over to me to kind of get my thoughts on it prior to you going
Yeah.
out and about. So I think we made some refining to the
Yep.
list.
Yep.
Um, you got the unfair advantage getting some help, but alas, they should know ahead of time. I messaged him. He was like 2-0 against his friends, and I was like, "They hate playing you yet?" They're like, "No."
Yeah.
Like they should have like, okay, this is a not Bob list. They did no.
Yeah.
It's good. I prefer the more well-rounded list over say TJ who we
Very skew.
interviewed here in
Yep.
this last. Um, that's just got it's not a bad list. So it's a good list. Obviously, you won a tournament, a 60-person tournament with it. I just prefer to be a little bit more well-rounded,
Yeah.
so to speak. At least,
Yeah. His list is very
um,
skew. I try to be well-rounded as well. I like to have some melee in there, obviously. And I just, not having any kind of shooting is a really bad idea in this edition, I think. Um, unless you're something like World Eaters or maybe Orcs, I don't know. But yeah, so overall, so my first game was against Votan. That was a kind of a slog, to be honest. They're tough. They're hard to kill, and their guns hit hard. A lot of their guns are damaged too, which was really rough. I took up hold against them, and then the uh, the other thing, the second game was against World Eaters. That was kind of a off meta list. He had Angron, of course. He did not have a lot of eight bound. Instead, he had the Lord of Skulls, the big demon engine thing. That thing was scary because it has uh, a big old scary weapon on it, and that was actually a really low scoring game. That was my lowest score. I think I only scored 60 points. We couldn't seem to get on the objectives. We were like almost afraid to engage each other. So, um, and then my third game was against Necrons. That was a tough one, but it really swung in my favor once I was able to kill the Catan. It was a triple Catan list, and man, Necrons are hard to kill. They are hard to kill. So, and then my last game was against the new player playing my friend's Chaos Knights. So, um, so yeah. So overall, I still really like this list. The lieutenant with combi weapon was really very hit or miss. I think I had maybe two games where it mattered. I think the Votan game and the Necron game are the only two games where his ability it was even relevant. And the Votan game was like uh, only a few times did it matter throughout that game. Now in the Necron game, it was crucial. So on the one hand, like I've thought about like swapping him out for something else. But then I think about that Necron game, and it's like, man, I don't know if I would have been able to kill as much as I did in the center, because the Necron
Mhm.
game, the mission was, you had there were three objectives in the middle of the board, and on turn three you got rid of the alpha objective, and on turn four you got rid of all the other objectives except for the center one. So we were fighting over that center one, that because it was worth 15 points in round four and five, round five, I guess. And then, so it could have been a big swing, and so we had like just dudes. All the dudes were in the middle of the board for the most of the game, including several. There was one. There was a Catan. There was a blob of Lich Guard. Um, so um, so yeah, that was definitely a good time to have reroll ones. That was pretty helpful. But otherwise, I don't know. I don't know, man. Like, I feel like it's a good ability, but sometimes it feels very, very situational. What are yours? Is your experience with it, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a consistent thing that kind of really does anything. I mean, it's useful to have, but it's going to be game by game play. I know it's kind of blasé as far as what that like an answer goes, but it's not something that you're relying on in
Right.
your list
It's not a
itself.
linchpin to the
Um,
list or anything. So,
yeah.
so obviously Helbrecht and the Emperor's Champion rode with the Sword Bros, and they were amazing. I'm 100% sold on the Emperor's Champion. He absolutely slaps. He killed like six characters uh, across the four games, including a knight. Um, being able to sweep with 10 attacks and 2 damage, or swing with precision at strength 8, AP 3 and 4 damage, like he lopped the head off of the Cryptek with one sword stroke. Um, it was pretty awesome. I really enjoyed him. Obviously, I already knew Helberg slapped, and he killed almost everything he touched. The only thing that he ran into trouble with was the warrior blob. That I thought I was gonna wipe it because I had whittled it down pretty good with shooting, and a bunch of different things shot at it. And I had whittled it down, and I'm like, all right, cool. Helberg's got 13 attacks. We're gonna roll these, and I rolled really poorly on the wound roll. I think I only ended up with like 7 or 8 attacks that got through. And then those crypto thralls, um, the man, he could not fail the invul saves on those crypto thralls. It was annoying as hell. Um, so yeah, so I think I think one crypto thrall saved all 8 of Helbrick's saves, which sucked before he died. So I ended up losing that battle. That's the only time Helbrecht and company lost a fight, was that. But it's fine because that was like sort of off to the side. Like I was just trying to keep that unit from engaging the center, which eventually they did. But
Mhm.
the Emperor's Champion and my Terminators, by then that was basically his only unit left of any relevance, and the Emperor's Champion and the Terminators were able to knock them down. I don't think they killed them outright, but they were able to keep them off the objective in the center. Um, so yeah, Steve says crypto thralls are a major pain. You can say that again. They are uh, they are definitely a pain to kill. Grand Enforcer says, how do you feel about replacing the lone LT with a Phobos LT with Perdition's Edge? It's the same points, and I've been pairing him with my infiltrators for lethal hits. See, the thing is the infiltrators in most all my games are just hiding behind terrain the entire time, not doing much of anything. They're just action monkeys or preventing deep strike. Um, so uh, so yeah, so I didn't. I don't feel like utilizing them for that is gonna be helpful for my list. I think what if I were gonna replace the lieutenant, I would probably consider combining the assault intercessors or yeah, assault intercessor with jump packs and taking a chaplain instead for another harder hitting combat unit. So speaking of them, I was really happy with them. They're not really a melee unit. I discovered they can kill some stuff, but they don't really get any innate buffs. The biggest thing about them is those mortal wounds, which I did use to kill the Hecaton in my Votan
Yep.
game because I needed to kill a vehicle that turn to score, bring it down. I ran tactical all 4 games, by the way, and I love tactical. I'm a huge proponent of it. A lot of my friends were running uh, fixed the first couple games, and I'm like, no, no, you got to try tactical. It's better. You'll score more points. And they tried it, and they all liked it. So, um, so yeah, so the the assault ints were really good because they're fast. I could do stuff with them. They could dish out a little bit of damage. They weren't like a real big damage dealer, but they were deadly enough to do some stuff. Um, they were kind of hit or miss on whether they killed their target or not, just depending on what I was throwing them into. Like I tried to kill a reanimator with them, and I whiffed, and then ultimately they just have died to attrition after that. so, so yeah, I really liked them as far as their utility. I think they have really good utility as a 5 man, um, but I may see what they're like as a 10 man too, because I haven't tried that yet. Um, Arcadia says, "Can't you theoretically have enough backline units to cover your DZ without infiltrators?" Yes, you can, but the infiltrators can cover so much ground with just themselves that it's it's really nice. And like in my Necron game, we played Dawn of War, so it's like the full board length deployment zone. So in those situations, having like something like infiltrators or whatnot. Now he didn't have any deep strike, so I didn't have to worry about it. But in a game like that, you got to kind of spread out a little bit more, just to cover your rear. Um, so yeah, the and the Lancers can kind of do that, but I also want to get the Lancers in range of their shorter range guns too, sometimes, so I can fire that Melta, which was nice. So the Sword Bros, Bob and I have been lauding the Sword Bros for quite some time, and they did not disappoint. They absolutely destroyed anything they touched for the most part, with the exception of that one Necron Warrior blob. They were just
And we'll talk
murderous.
about them in a little bit, their performance in Worlds.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. We're because of that, we're expecting a points hike on them. Which, as long as they don't go crazy, I think it'll be okay. Um, so yeah, they were amazing. The scouts were, I don't know, they didn't do a whole lot, but at the same time, like they're a great little utility unit. Like I can pull them off the board. Like they just offer so much, as far as like infiltrating them, scouting them. Like you can put them places, that other units, even your infiltrators, may not want to go. They're so cheap that it's such a just a disposable unit that it's really really good unit to include. Even if they don't really seem to accomplish anything for you, they just give you utility. It's a cheap little action monkey unit. It's got a heavy bolter. It's got a sniper rifle. That never really factored into any of my games. I never really did any damage with any of it, but whatever. It doesn't matter. That's
mhm.
not why I'm taking them. I'm taking them for the ability to infiltrate, to then also scout, and then also pull them off the board if I need to. So um, they're absolutely worth keeping. Really good unit. The Terminators were pretty solid. Um, I might consider switching them out. I don't know. It was nice having a unit in reserves to bring in and threaten my opponent with deep strike. I don't own Inceptors, so I had to go with something else. I know Inceptors are the meta choice. That's fine. I hate the models, so it's been a struggle for me to try to decide whether I want to buy them or not, and maybe convert them to see if I can get them to look decent, because I just hate
All
the
right,
current models.
all right, chat. You need to rail into him. He needs to buy them.
So, so yeah, but the Termies did pretty well. Uh, they um, they did what I needed to. They were effective in every game. They played a part in my wins. In the Votan game, they dropped in. He left his rear lines undefended, so I was able to drop in, and that was the one where you burn the objectives. So I was able to drop in,
Yep.
kill off a unit or most of a unit with charging. They charged. They made a 9-inch charge on the on the deep strike. They basically killed off a unit and then he fell back. And I used my strat, which I failed, to stop him from falling back. However, uh, he lost like four of the five models that were left to the fallback, the desperate escape. So so yeah, then they went and raised an objective. So the Termies were good in uh, the Necron game too, where I had them um, uh, help keep the warrior horde off the middle objective at the end of the game. Um, and then they again in the Knights game dropped behind and charged a knight and killed it. I rapid ingressed them in that game. I paid the CP for it. So I liked the Termies. They did solid. So I was not disappointed with them. The Lancers were obviously the Lancers. They killed so much stuff. It was amazing. They are absolutely worth it if you don't have any. They're starting to come back in stock. I know I just bought another Gladiator um, from my LGS. So now I'll have a total of three um, if I need to run three. But I'm also not taking I'm not gluing the turret piece on, so it can still be an impulsor, which is pretty cool. So the Lancers. So as far as the loadout, um, the I've become a fan of the frag launchers. Sellers says, "Thanks for being here this morning. Thank you for your support. We're glad to be here. Even if Bob's a little tired." Um,
Yeah. Sorry, I've been a little bit distracted. I'm making paste spins of all the world's BT lists that were undefeated. So, but I'm finishing up now. So,
no
yes, I am
worries.
here. I
Plus,
appreciate everything for you all being here.
I'm just blathering on about my list anyway. So, and then Bob and I'll kind of talk about where maybe we can improve it and maybe his thoughts. So, I've long been a fan of Stormbolters over the frag things, the frag assaults. And I was looking at it again, and I was like, you know what? Honestly, it's a little shorter range, but the D6 plus blast is really quite good, and I really liked having the frag launchers instead of the storm bolters. I took them on both impulsors and the gladiators, and having 2d6 shots that are blast. I mean, it's incidental damage anyway because we don't really expect um, them to kill much with strength 4 AP dash AP nothing, right? Um, but there's plenty of stuff out there that you can trigger blast with. And I didn't play any tough three armies, but I imagine into like larger horde tough three stuff would be pretty good. Um, so overall, and maybe I just rolled hot with them, but overall, I like them a lot better. I had a lot more shots than I would have with Stormbolters. Um, so yeah. Now Bob has been trying to convince me for a long time to run the missile on the impulsors. And you can see here that I did run the missile. And all right, you convinced me, Bob. I really
I,
liked.
I The guns are better than defense, in my opinion. If you, I mean, even if it's an incidental missile, one missile is not going to add up. But if you do it across like two or three, or maybe even four, depending on how many you have in your list, that's almost a dead vehicle a turn.
Well, and if you
I
get
mean,
if you know if you get that shot through, it's D6 damage.
I
So
know,
it can be
right?
a chunk of damage, right? And I've really liked the missile that it has three profiles.
Yeah,
Um,
it's adaptable.
it's really adaptable. There was once or twice I fired frags. There was several times I fired the anti-fly. That's awesome because you're gonna wound with it if you hit with it. And then it does two damage, so you know you can kill something infantry related that flies. I used that on the um, the Lich Guard blob because he had a Technomancer that has the cloak. Well, the cloak gives him the fly keyword, and the keywords are shared across the whole unit. So technically, it's a fly unit, even though the other models can't fly, only he can fly. They share the keyword.
Mhm.
So anti-fly, I still wound the unit on twos, and I killed the Lich Guard model with that. So, um, so yeah, and then of course the crack missile on it. You know, it's like you don't expect it. The same thing with the multi melta. You don't really expect it to do like tons of damage every turn, but it's there and it has the opportunity to do it. And I did land it a few times, and made an impact. So I'm a huge fan of the missiles now. So well done, Bob. You've convinced me. Good job.
I don't say stuff just for shits and giggles.
So yeah, and then that leaves us with the Vindicator. So the Vindicator was a champ, man. I loved the Vindicator. He absolutely murdered face. In the Votan game, he annihilated a six-man blob of bikes. That was a huge blow because I think I killed them down to one bike just with the Vindicator on turn one, which was awesome. And he pairs really well with the Lancers because, yes, he's shorter range, so you got to throw him out there and get him a little closer. But he's just as dangerous as the Lancers, and he has the upside with Blast, and you can't tag him in close combat to remove his ability to blast. Um, because he'll just shoot you in the face. He doesn't care with that siege shield. So Vindicator was really absolutely. I'm convinced. I remember my first game of 10th. You guys probably remember the short I made where I blew the dust off the Vindicator, and then it died like the first turn and did nothing. But in these games, he was very very useful. I killed a lot of stuff with that thing. So highly recommend a Vindicator to pair with Lancers.
Yeah, they're definitely a fun unit.
Plus,
I
it's
like them.
classic. It's a classic 40k unit. So, so yeah. So that was kind of my experiences with the units. One thing I neglected to do, which I shall do in the future, is I forgot to bring some models for my Primaris Crusaders to have a bolt rifle guy or a neophyte shotgun guy, so I could get assault. Uh, Really, you want to include at least one. And in a 20-man blob, maybe even two or three, because you're going to take some casualties and you can pull them off first. But being able to advance them and do an action, like there were a couple of times when I was like, man, that would be really helpful right now if I could just make sure that I get there and advance them. It probably cost me a couple of points here and there, not being able to do that. So highly, highly recommend. I'll definitely be adding one bolt rifle or assault or a shotgun guy to my Crusader squad
Yeah.
just so I can do that action because it's they reroll advances, so they're really reliable in getting them where you need them to be. So they were good action monkey utility units too. We had I had several times where they charged stuff and they were good melee killing stuff, And then I also had several times when I was just like, you know what, they're just gonna be an action monkey. I don't need them to do anything else. I need them to score me points, and they did just that. So Primaris Crusaders are freaking fantastic.
Yeah, I've been using them a lot in the 10-man configuration
Hmm.
um, to great success.
Scout was really nice. Grand Enforcer says, "Could you please explain that mechanic?" Okay, so as far as the assault, so there are several secondaries and stuff like that in the missions. We call them actions. They're not really actions, but they are things that say, okay, when you do this, pick a unit. That unit has to be eligible to shoot. And then after you selected that unit is not eligible to shoot and it cannot charge or whatever. And then it does a thing and you get points for it, right? But it has to be eligible to shoot in order to do that. So when you advance, you can't shoot unless you have assault weapons. So by adding one assault weapon, because the bolt rifles and the neophyte firearms are both have assault keyword, that makes the unit eligible to shoot because I have that one gun that I can shoot when I advance, which makes the unit eligible to shoot, to be selected to shoot. So so yeah, so that allows you to advance them, and then still do that thing because they're eligible to shoot. So Jared says, can't use the neophyte for that. They don't get shotguns. They have a generic range weapon profile, no assault on it. I'm pretty sure the neophyte firearms. Let me double check that.
On
Um,
the Crusader squads,
yeah,
yes, they certainly do have the assault or the shotguns.
ranged weapons. They made it all just one thing. They got rid of the bolt rifle or the bolter and shotgun differential. It's just called neophyte firearm. But yes, it does have assault. It's two shots, 18 inches, 3+ to hit, strength 4, no AP, 1 damage. Um, so yeah, so that having one of those assault weapons on it gives you the ability to essentially advance and perform one of those action-like things. So definitely include at least one of those in all of your 10-man squads, and in a 20-man squad you probably can include two or three. So as you take casualties, you can just take them. No worries, Jared. So yeah, so that's definitely something I'm going to be changing. Obviously, that's incredibly minor. It's literally just a model swap and change the list. Um, I Bob, what are your thoughts if I drop the LT with combi and combine the assault ints into one unit with a chaplain?
It really depends on what you were trying to do. If you want something that kills something, you could do that. Um, After playing around with it for a few lists, while it was really kind of handy to have that unit that can go out there and do a ton of mortal wounds, especially after seeing what was successful. And I know not like a ton of people are going to be pacing the meta, so to speak, but
Mhm.
I always like to keep in mind because everyone's going to look at the list from the big tournaments and kind of emulate them. But MSU is is kind of a thing. Like I
Yep.
think you get more out of the list keeping them as they are. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked them as the 5-man, even though they weren't super deadly. Their mortal wounds did come into play. Like I said, I was able to kill the Hecaton land fortress. It had 2 wounds left, and I got all 5 guys in there. So I was like, please, I was like, just give me 2, because I needed it for bring it down, so I could score bring it down that turn. Plus the Hecaton's guns are nasty, so its bolters are damage 2 and AP 1, which sucks. So so yeah, I did not like getting shot by that thing. So yeah, I charged into it and I was like, all right, well, Hopefully, I can do two mortal wounds and then just not worry about it. But I got the power fist. Maybe I can plink a wound in there somehow with these guys, and I rolled three mortal wounds, so I did it in, which was good. So yeah, I mean it's handy, but at the same time, like as a five man, they're really disposable, and it's like, yep, just go forth and be annoying. Um, you don't always need to kill everything. So plus the lancers and the vindicators pump out a ton of damage. So even if you need to fire into something less than ideal with them, you're gonna do a bunch of damage. Um, so yeah, the the other unit that I'm considering swapping about would be the Terminators. Um, Now, if I swapped out the Terminators, I'm sure you're going to tell me put it in Inceptors, but
Yeah,
they are a
Inceptors.
75 point difference. So
Yeah, and you can get another scout squad.
yeah, or if I dropped the LT, it gives me 145 points to play with. Um, could take something maybe like an Invictor. Bob doesn't seem keen on that.
Yeah, but it doesn't really fit the list.
Yeah, that's true. So,
I
um,
mean, the Terminators do things in the list, like
they
what
do.
you're trying to do. It does deep strike. If you don't really want to go with Inceptors, you still have a deep strike threat
Yep,
that does something.
yep.
Um, Star Bolters aren't going to do a ton, um,
The
mathematically,
the
unless
crack
it's a
missile
horde.
was decent. I got some use out of that. So,
Yeah, and then adds another missile to the list.
yep,
So, um, I mean, it's not a bad take at all. Like if you like Terminators, keep them
I
in
do
there.
like
I don't.
Terminators because the new models are sick.
Yeah, I
So,
don't see a problem with them, honestly. Unless they were a legitimate like it's only 185 points in the scheme of your list. So unless they legitimately hurt you, I don't think you need to change them.
no, they
Um,
didn't. And in fact, like I said, there were several times where they were very useful, and their
yeah,
durability was really awesome because, um, especially like my opponent's like, okay, well, I'm gonna shoot the hecaton into I'm gonna pump everything into the Terminators. Great, armor of contempt, and it's like, cool. Oh, I also got cover. I'm still saving your shit on twos.
yeah,
And then that 4+ save, and then you add the feel no pain because I ran uphold in almost every game. I did run suffer not in the Knights game just to try it out. What? Why
oh,
are you shaking your
I'm
head at me?
disappointed.
You're disappointed.
Disappointed.
Why?
Uh, that's what we got fervent for.
Well, so speaking of fervent, um, the only way to utilize it in this list is if I am I'm getting out my sword bros ahead of time, or which I did once or twice. But honestly, to be perfectly honest, a lot of the times, like they didn't need lethal hits. They absolutely destroyed whatever they touched, regardless. There was at least several combats where the sword bros didn't even get to swing because Hellberg just murdered everything. so, it honestly, I didn't. I found the usefulness of the durability of uphold to be really good. The 5+ leadership actually came into play one time. I think I rolled a 5 on one of my battle shock tests. Um, but yeah, I mean, don't forget too, against the Knights player, he was the new player, so I was also
Yeah.
like, if this is a good time to try it out and a good enemy to try it out on and see how I liked it, and it was okay. Um, it wasn't game changing. I probably would have been better served with a Bolt just because Feel No Pains are really good. So, uh, So yeah, I especially love seeing those implausible nature logos on the sick side whenever I roll Pheno Pain. So yeah, so guys, that's kind of my experience from the weekend. I'm really happy with that list. Honestly, I'm pretty to the point where I'm kind of wanting to try out a completely different list, maybe a different detachment. And you know,
Don't you dare say it. Don't you dare
that's
say
how
it.
that's how pretty that's how happy I am with that list. It performed really well. It kind of actually, you know, as I was thinking about it over the course of the weekend, it really reminded me a lot of our ninth edition, um, you know, trade lists that Bob and I ran and talked about. It has trade pieces in it, right? It has a lot of MSU. But honestly, for me, it has a lot of the things that I like in a list. It has blobs of Crusaders, it has Sword Bros, it has, you know, the cool named characters like the Emperor's Champion and the Helbricht. It's got a Vindicator. It has tanks. I like tanks. And it has Terminators. I love Terminators. So it really has almost everything in a list that I really like. The only thing it doesn't have is a fat 20-man blob with Grimaldus, which obviously, you know, there's only so many points. So,
Yep.
given, and honestly, that unit wouldn't really necessarily fit what this list is trying to do. I'd have to drop too much to fit it in there because that's like 300 and some points, almost 400 points of units. So, but yeah, overall, really like the list. I think it's fun to play. I felt like I always had units to do stuff with,
Hmm.
which is good because stuff is gonna die, so you gotta have backup plans. Yeah, it performed really well. So um, next up, I think I have a Firestorm list that I want to try that has 75 power armored bodies in it. Why are you shaking your head? I showed you this list. You liked it. It's got a 20-man Crusader blob
Oh,
in it.
okay. As long as you're using that one and not the one that you're recording a video about tonight. Big disclaimer from Bob here. Don't do it. Don't do it. That's all I'm going to say.
So, David, aka Orion, you might know from our Discord server, and I are recording a video tonight, and we're talking about um, a unit that probably really, I don't know. We're gonna find out whether that unit really sucks or not, and if it has a place in
No,
any
it
of our
doesn't.
lists.
No, it doesn't. Don't do it. But
So, so anyway, no, but the Firestorm list that I have has 40 Crusaders in it, two 10-man and a 20-man. It's got aggressors in it. It's got Hellblasters, you know, in a drive-by impulsor. It's got some Infernus Marines. So it's running Valiants instead of Lancers. I think Bob and I did the math, and the Valiant edges out the Lancer in Firestorm because of the extra strength and the ability for it to assault. Um, and that's mostly because of our extra multi melta. So,
yeah.
so yeah, I think I'm gonna try that list next because it has a it's like basically Black Tide, 75 Space Marines. It's pretty awesome. So, um, Steve says solid list and provides the toolbox. Yep, it sure does. Beyond the Grave says feels like there is so much more damage in 10th with blast, devastating wounds. So I can't take any other Val than uphold. Yeah, I mean, just a Feel No Pain is going to be useful no matter who you're facing. So there's that. Um, but also, you know, it's just the leadership 5+ is deceptively good. There's a lot of armies like Tyranids who can just throw battle shock after battle shock after battle shock at you, and suddenly not controlling an objective can really ruin your day. So having a 5+ leadership is amazing. Seller says, I love Firstborn Crusaders, I really do. But buying and painting all those dudes just to see them disappear will be painful. I think they're getting a points hike in January, to be honest. There's no way they stay at 65. They're like, I said this on Friday. to me, like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not complaining that they're 65, because sure, we'll take advantage of it while we have it. But a 10-man tactical squad is, um, 130 points, or no, 160. Excuse me, 160 points, and 10 of these guys is 130. Why are they 30 points cheaper? For literally something better, because I'm going to take 2 5-mans and have twice the special weapons that a tac squad has. What? So I could see them going up to 80, honestly.
They could just reduce the cost of the tactical squads by 30.
They could do that too. They could do that too. Um, Jared says a trade style list can still take advantage of the other vows. Yeah, and I don't have, the thing is, I don't have Tannhausers in here. So I could theoretically take advantage of the other vows, but like I said, against the Knights, had I been playing the actual owner of the Knights, I still probably would have taken Uphold, because their guns, there were several of their guns just go straight through your armor.
Mm.
And even if you can reduce 2 or 3 points of those big, huge damage numbers, it could mean the difference in your tank living or dying. So having the Feel No Pain is really useful against high damage stuff. So so yeah. So any final thoughts on my list or my experience from the weekend, Bob?
I'm gonna try and get to the next one, but I will say that I'm gonna have to tone down my lists like dramatically.
Well,
Dramatically.
when you play me or Patrick, you can bring your full list, because Patrick is a tournament player, so he
Did he come this last time around?
mhm. Yeah, he tried out I
Yeah.
think 3 different lists. He ran one list that was the swarm list. I forget what it's called, endless swarms or something.
Yep.
Uh, and I think he put 300 models on the table. He said, "I'm never doing that again." It was
Ah.
horrendous. It was horrendous.
Yeah, I think doesn't his wife help him paint though? So
No,
like,
no, he does it all
oh,
himself. Yeah,
oh man,
yeah.
that's brutal.
He actually didn't. He actually didn't have all those models painted. So, um,
I feel a little bit better.
yeah, yeah.
I
So
gotta give a shout out to my commission painter, uh, nameless demon on our Discord. He's hooking me up, so
good.
he unfortunately, as I mentioned, 16-hour days. So I'm not able to paint as much. I do have a friend that wants me to paint his 40k army. He's starting to do an escalation stuff so that we can start playing, and a group of friends.
Nice.
So, but the stipulation is if he starts, he wants to have a painted army. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of ironic because he's starting Drakari, and I have a Drakari army that I've never played,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's not painted. So
Who's
I'm
the
going to be painting
heretic
someone
now,
else's.
Bob?
Well, I've never played them, so I
You
don't know
still
yet.
purchase them. You still purchase them. Isn't that what you tell
So I'm
me?
going to be painting his Drakari army before even mine.
That's funny.
But I told him you're assembling them. I am not assembling those.
Smart move. To hell with that. I did that once. I commissioned build, mostly for
Uh,
one guy I know who switches army like most people switch underwear. And he's so I've built probably close to, I don't know, 8 or 9 armies for him. Um, and yeah, Drukari was one of them. Never again. The hell with that. So Um, so yeah. That's sort of the first part of the show there, where we talked about my weekend and experiences. Bob, what is going on in the wider world of meta?
okay, so for those that have been under a rock, this weekend is
Worlds.
the World Championships in actually Alex's backyard of Atlanta.
That's right.
So this has been kind of a busy season for me, so I haven't been doing a whole lot of large GT traveling. So I don't got a golden ticket to play at Worlds. I'm going, fortunately, next year. But uh, you may have seen in the various different places like competitive 40k on Reddit or various different Discords, Facebook. But our Black Templars, after day one, there's uh, 10 total players at Worlds playing. And actually, um, I posted it in our admin channel, so maybe Alex can pull it up on here so you can see it, possibly. But
I don't think I'm set up to do that.
okay,
So,
but it's okay. There is 10 total players um, for Black Templar, so that's actually quite a few. We're the fourth most represented faction in all of 40k, and
at the
6 of our
tournament
players
or
at
in
the
general?
tournament.
Okay, nice.
Yep. So Eldar have 34 players, then it's Chaos Space Marines at 20, Tau at 11, and then Black Templars are 10.
34 Eldar players. What a cursed
Yes.
tournament.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, I know, right?
So we have 6 of our players after day one, which was actually
Friday.
Friday. Yep. We're undefeated. So that was actually fairly exciting. So that's what I was doing for the first little part of this. And I posted all those lists in the chat there. So if you're watching the replay, you won't get them for the first little bit here. Apologies. But you can find them on the Discord. I pinned them in our competitive 40k talk. But yes, so it was interesting to see. I was watching them. Let's pretend that I was working, but I was watching the results on some of these. Unfortunately, on day two, 4 of the 6 lists ended up losing. So Dominic and I think it was Kyle McCord ended up winning. Um, their first games on day 2, and everyone else lost. Um, but yes, there were some things to note out of that. So unfortunately, going into day 3, Kyle was 9th place, so I think he was still undefeated, if I believe. Going into it, he was running Gladius, and you can see the list there I set, like I mentioned. But he did lose. He was 9th, so he was out of the first bracket. But then Siegler was sick. He was playing Tau and um, had to drop. So Kyle got bumped up to the top bracket, and then he proceeded to uh, lose to Chaos Space Marines, unfortunately, which is a tough matchup for us. And then in the losers bracket, because the losers bracket could actually produce a world champion, even though they lost. Unfortunately, he lost Elderai, so he ended up losing out.
He gone.
But we did very, very, very well overall. I haven't tabulated all of the records thus far, but at least after first day, we had the highest win rate out of all of the
It was like
factions.
61%, right?
Yeah, yeah, 60% right on the
It was like
dot.
60, okay.
So
And there's games today,
yes,
right?
yeah, just the finals. So it's
Only a
like a
few
shatter
games.
round. So everyone that lost out yesterday is now out. So,
Yeah.
but yes. So I was watching the lists that we're playing. Interesting meta lists here.
Pretty
Of note,
diverse detachments as well.
yeah.
There's like almost like there's Gladius, there's Righteous Crusaders, there's Ironstorm, there's Firestorm. I think the only two that we didn't see were, or no, there was a Vanguard list in there too, wasn't there?
No, no.
No? Okay. Um,
There could have been in the top the 8 or the 10 lists. I didn't look at all the people that lost right away.
oh, okay.
Um,
But
I
yeah, pretty
know that there
diverse
was,
set of lists for BT, which is good to see. Um, also good to see us doing well. However, we're doing a little too well. So,
yeah.
are we
So I
gonna get
checked.
nerfed?
Yeah. Well, after this weekend, there's some units that are a little scary. So if you go to statcheck.com slash the meta is every weekend it updates. It will scrounge through all of the GTs, all of the RTTs that are posted on Best Coast pairings, which is primarily 95% of all events use for their matchups and scoring. Even it's so popular that Games Workshop uses it for their tournaments. So, uh, yeah. So as of last weekend, it's not going to include this weekend. Black Templars are at a 53% win rate for 10th edition,
Not including this
uh,
weekend.
not including this weekend. However, that's all of 10th edition, right? So the last month, we're at like a 59% win rate. So after 10th edition came out, after there was all the complaints about Oath of Moments being gone, we are doing better without it, which
so,
is just the strangest thing ever.
so what do you think the cause of that is?
I've been asking around what people felt was that because I almost want to make a video about it, but I feel like the common consensus is that people just hadn't figured out 10th edition yet, which I mean maybe, but I think the real reason is we're leveraging tools to get around
To
the
get
crutch.
some kind of wound rolls. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
whether it be lancers or lethals, some way, some fashion, and that's what we're doing to get around it. And because those data sheets are good, and maybe we didn't take them before because we didn't need them because we had oaths. Um, Now we're skewing very heavily into those things.
Or
Like
thunder strikes with +1 to wound.
yeah. So um, overall, I if this trend continues, and I don't see a reason why it should not, I think we're gonna see a heavy nerf. I don't think necessarily the Primaris Sword Brethren will see a nerf. Maybe like a 5 point increase, 10 at most. I don't see why they would nerf it hard. Um,
Well, and that's because, I
Successful
mean,
lifts,
melee is still not king anymore, right?
yeah,
Shooting is still pretty prevalent. And the units that are doing the majority of your damage are still shooting units. So,
yeah.
you know,
So the trend is that right now, at least with Black Templars players, so there's no way to know if you're using Black Templars list other than by looking at the list itself. But the
mhm.
players have to classify what faction they're using, and then it also takes into account the detachment. But Black Templars, self-identified Black Templars players are winning at a slightly higher rate with Iron Storm, um, and very closely followed behind by Righteous Crusaders. So I think it's like 57% is Iron Storm win rate, and that's like 56% for Righteous Crusaders. So it's not even that we're skewing into Iron Storm and winning. Even Righteous Crusaders is winning above the 55%.
Yeah, I mean,
So
barely, you know.
yes, but there's only three other factions that are doing as good or better. So Elder Eye is still at the top, and then you have Chaos Space Marines. So they've actually really jumped up a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but the points also could play a little bit of a factor because before the new codex dropped, we did get that. We had a couple weeks of new points. Uh, where they dropped some points on some things, so that could play it into effect, and they may increase some of those points back up again.
Yeah.
Um, but Leagues of Votan are about where we're at too. So they saw a ton of points drops,
Yeah.
making a lot of their things really viable. So they're
And
doing well.
they're durable, man. Like all their stuff is tough 5 or higher. Their guns are nasty, especially their guns on their big guns on their vehicles are all like, damage 2 and higher. Like it's playing against them, they have a lot going for them. So yeah, the other thing I think is interesting is that and Bob and I kind of talked about this a little bit before the stream. I think and I said this when uh, they first dropped, or we first did I think it was a stream where we talked about um, all the new detachments and I think it's the target augury web, whatever the aura of lethal hits for the Tech Marine is. I can 100% see that, and I still 100% see that getting nerfed on the next balance pass to be pick one instead of everything within 6. Because everything within 6, I mean, that's a lot. You can get a lot of stuff in there. And they have lone operatives, so they can't be shot. So I can see that dropping down to pick one instead of, and coming down in points too, obviously, because of that. Um, but yeah, it's I think that's playing into it as well. The single reroll plays really well into MSU units with low volume of fire because if you got a
Mm-hmm.
las cannon here or a high damage shot here, there, or whatever, lancers don't really need the help because they already have a reroll. Um, but other units that have low volume of fire stuff that don't, getting that extra reroll is really useful. So it makes them a lot more consistent. So yeah, I think that's probably why Ironstorm is a little bit above the rest. But I think that Firestorm and Righteous Crusaders are, I mean, obviously as we see, Righteous Crusaders is right below Firestorm, so it's not like it's lagging way behind, or that or Ironstorm is like way higher than everything else.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I love StatCheck, so I would recommend you going on it, and you can
Yeah,
look at a bunch of different stats on it. So since 10th edition, um, it shows the amount of games that are played, the population of detachment. So obviously, some of this is skewed because we've had 6 months of not Space Marine uh,
yeah,
new codex, but right now it's 69% games have been played using Righteous Crusaders. Now that's a little bit skewed, but we're Ironstorm is creeping up real fast. They're at 18%, and it's only been out for what, a month. So
yeah.
I mean, it's tournament players are coming out in in force using that Ironstorm,
Well,
but
yeah.
they're still using Righteous Crusaders. But there is one thing that I did note on some of the lists. Um, I did look at some of the lists that uh, for the Black Templars players that were um, at the tournament, and I did see something very interesting, and I wanted to kind of point out. It's something that I I've kind of toted for a little bit about our sword brethren. So first of all, I'm going to say that a lot of people have said the talking heads. We're also a talking head, I guess. But talking heads have said that sword brethren aren't good. They're not in tournament lists. You don't take them, etc., etc., etc. You go to Worlds, the best players in the world. These are all like GT winners or top podium finish players. So they're very, very good. The best at what they do, right? And these players are taking Sword Brethren in their lists.
Hmm.
So I think that's important to note. So when you really kind of want to see what actually is very successful, this is the tournament that you kind of look at for the meta. It's going to be one of three: Worlds, Las Vegas, and Nova. I think those are the three that you basically you see what the health of the community is, what the meta is, and for the Black Templars, that is Sword Brother.
Yeah.
But the second thing is, Alex and I have been talking, uh, splitting our Sword Brethren into two 5-man units, or just in a 5-man. Some people just prefer the single one, which is fine. And not using the 10-man bomb. The 10-man bomb is fun. It's crazy good. It kills anything that attacks. Statistically, there's going to be some one-offs here and there with bad dice. But with Helbrecht and the Lieutenant or Castellan giving it lethal, it basically can kill anything.
Yep.
And most of the time, you see it in a Land Raider. So I saw something interesting in the lists that took that bomb with the Land Raider, with the Helbrecht, with the Lieutenant. Every single one of them lost on day one at least once. The players that took them in 5-man units, either one or two, and usually in impulsors, won their games.
Yep.
So I think that's just interesting. It could be just coincidence based on their matchups, but I just thought it was interesting that every single player that had the bomb lost. It's just too many points, in my opinion, in one place. Even
It's a
if you
lot.
split the unit into two 5-man units in a Land Raider and then you split them out that way, you still have the unit in the Land Raider. It's still one target to eliminate all of your mobility right away in the game. I just don't like it. I don't like it. And I think this is like anecdotal evidence, so to speak, that it just is not top tier competitive. If you want to be top tier competitive with the Sword Brother, you have to split them into 5-man and give them a character so that they can buff.
Yeah. So 10 guys with an LT and Helbrecht and Tannhauser's Bones and a Land Raider Crusader is 680 points. That is huge. That is a huge amount of points in one place. And there are plenty of things that can blow a Land Raider off the board. Um, it's harder now, but it's still one of those things that, um, it's fine for a casual game, but as much as I love it, I feel like I feel like it's become too much in one place.
Yep.
And honestly, after the last four games, like there aren't many targets that need that many dudes to attack it. Um, Helbrecht and or the EC and five dudes are gonna kill almost everything that they touched anyway. Especially if you can get them lethal, and if it's the oath target, they're gonna kill it anyway.
Yep.
So, so yeah. Um, now,
So that's just kind of an interesting thing that I noted.
yeah. Now I am gonna have a video, a Math Hammer video coming soon, where we're talking about the Math Hammer of fishing. So fishing for those sixes for lethals or sustained, and that'll be interesting. As actually was surprising to me when it's beneficial to do so and when it's not. So stay tuned for that one.
The Scorcher says, I hope the Eldar would get addressed soon with them being so far above the median. So actually, fortunately, they're not that high above the median anymore. Their win rate is just over 60%, I think 61%. And the top like 4 or 5 have caught up. So Let's hope that the Eldari catch a nerf and the Chaos Space Marines catch a nerf before us because they're still performing higher than us.
Yeah.
But Games Workshop's trend is to whole swath everything that's above the 55%. So hopefully ours is just like a tiny little blip. Because if you look at all the other Space Marine players, like whether it be Space Wolves is the other faction that's doing really well in Stormlance, like really well in Stormlance.
Yeah.
So I called that one. But overall, it's they're still 45 to 50, 52%. So if you nerf the Space Marine units, then you're going to see Space Marines overall drop, not just like the Blind Templars and the
So,
Space Wolves.
Bob, what do you think? Obviously, we're probably going to catch a nerf. I guess it's a two-part question. Number one, what do you think those nerfs should be, and what do you think they're going to be? Because we know GW's heavy-handed past. Now they've been pretty light on Eldar, to be honest. Um, because obviously they're still the best in all the land, and they've won probably at this point now more tournaments than Tyranids, who were the winningest faction in all of ninth, won in all of ninth, and we're 6 months into 10th, and Eldar have already won more tournaments than Nids did in all of ninth, which is absurd. So,
I will say that Eldar are beatable now, which is a good thing. But it's tough to deal with uh, dual avatar list.
it's tough to deal with an army that can cheat legally.
Well, they can cheat, but they can do it at a much less damaging
Yeah.
way. But like, I feel like they're beatable now. Honestly, if you play the game, a really top tier opponent, like one of the top players in the opponent in the game, eh, with an Eldar list, you're probably going to lose because not only are they one of the best players in the world, they have one of the strongest.
I think
Uh,
um I think they're gonna I think you're gonna lose against the best player in the world, regardless of what army he's playing.
yeah, yeah.
So
Let's be honest, but you're seeing like double avatars. You're seeing 3 night spinners. For those that don't know what night spinner is, you probably not played Eldar in a while, but
mhm,
it's indirect, which is basically like a better whirlwind that's
yeah,
fast. Um, Obviously, they still have the other things. You're not going to see wraith knights as much, but you do see the little ones. Uh, I don't remember what their names are.
yeah.
But
Night Spinners,
Wraith
for
Guard,
those of you who don't know, is a 48-inch gun with blast, D6 plus 3 shots, hits on threes. It's strength 7. It has no AP, but it's damage 2, and it's devastating wounds with twin linked.
devastating wounds, key.
That's the key, but also the fact that it built in twin linked, which means they can
Mhm.
re-roll their own wound rolls looking for those devastating wounds. That's why it's
Yep.
stupid. So,
Yep. So they just pound you with those things.
yep.
So like your infiltrators are gone. That's why you need to
And
have
it's
an assassin
it's
or a lone operative
it's
in your
somehow cheaper
list.
than a Vindicator. It's 180 points.
Yep. It's
So,
a really good weapon or fighting
yeah.
platform. So when you have the tools like that, you can play up against any list, but they're beatable now. So Chaos Space Marines have a very, very tough unit in the cultists, and they have several characters, usually with Abaddon, that gives them 5++, feel no pain, to a unit within, I think it's 6 inches, maybe it's 12. I don't remember. But it's almost always going to be a cultist unit that they have their little special character or their character cultist guy attached to them. That makes them more durable as well. Plus, they can buff them. Um, so that's a thing. And oh yes, Jared, and
Oh yeah,
the Night Spinner
night
does
spinners
slow you
slow
down too,
units. Yeah,
which is super annoying.
that unit needs to be 200 or 210 points. There's no way it should be 180. I mean, it's cheaper than a Redemptor, for God's sake. Like, come on.
Yep. So I mean, yeah, Chaos Space Marine's got a unit that is um very very durable. Then they have the Chosen. So basically, they can jump their. No, usually it's at least one unit of cultists, sometimes two, that they are just super durable. They sit on their objectives, kind of like what we try and do with our 20-man units, but much cheaper and honestly more durable. And they can be buffed up to be just blenders as well. So then you got to worry about the Chosen. So they just got a lot of tools. They still have the shooting that you can put on the board.
Possessed
Just
are
a
pretty
ton of
good too.
tools. Yep. So and
So,
then Votan is just super cheap.
back to the question at hand. What do
Oh
you
yeah,
think?
sorry, got
What do you
distracted.
think? Yeah, no worries. What do you think needs to be nerfed to bring our win rate down a little bit? And I guess more importantly, what do we think GW is going to do?
So I honestly think to bring us down, there's going to be two things that needs to happen. It's unfortunately going to indirectly nerf us in all Space Marines. The successful lifts are running a couple different things. They're running impulsors, and they're running Iron Storm, and they're running Iron Storm Firstborn Crusader squads. So I think the Firstborn Crusader squads are going to take a hit, at least 10 points, probably 15,
Which
to bring
honestly,
them up.
it's fine. Like they're still really good at 80 points. So
So they'll put them in line with the tacticals. I could see them going to 75 points just to keep them a little bit more niche.
mhm.
Um, but the other thing is, I think impulsors are going to take a big hit back up. So everyone's using impulsors now that are winning in the top performance of Black Templars. So 85 points is a great, great thing. Um, the other thing, honestly, is I've heard rumors going around is the Calidus is going to get stomped. So expect expect to see a big nerf to the Calidus.
Hey, that
I
doesn't
don't
affect
think,
me because I don't run
yeah,
one.
you're one of like 5% of players.
Yeah, I know. I'm just not a
Well,
big
I will
allies
say that
guy. I don't know. It's
the
useful.
competitive Space Marine players
Yeah. If I were
at
going to a
tournaments.
tournament, I'd probably consider it, but yeah.
So we really kind of need lone operative to get around things like the Night Spinner, because I kind of touched on it. So that indirect is such a big thing that they can take out our infiltrator unit that's sitting on an objective in our backfield, and then all of a sudden we have to dedicate something to our back line. To get around that, you have to have the lone operative sitting there too, so you can get on the objective or already be on the objective that they can't target,
Yeah.
so that you don't have to worry about that. Um, Obviously, there's other ways of getting around that, but I mean, if you don't have lone operative, you're kind of screwed. You have to put something else there. Um, I think Sword Brethren are probably going to take a 5 point hike as a unit, a 5-man unit. So 1 point, maybe 10, but I don't really feel like they need it. Honestly, they feel good at 140.
Well, and the other thing too is you consider is like how are they being utilized? Well, they're not just by themselves. They have a character, so you're paying for a character, right? Which buffs them and they buff the character. Then you got to take an impulsor. So if you nerf the impulsor, you don't really need to nerf the sword bros because you're already reducing or increasing that unit's cost. Its opportunity cost. So how much do you think they're going to bump the impulsors by?
10 to 15.
Yeah, that's what I could see that as well.
Yeah. So, so I think those are going to be the main ones that we're going to see. They may up the Primaris Crusader squads, but they've not done it in all of the rounds so far. So I feel like they like the points where it
Well,
is, and I think they even dropped them.
and they're not being spammed by top lists or
Yeah,
winning
it'll
lists.
take one or two.
Yeah,
Now, I think it was Dominic that took an interesting list in Righteous Crusaders. Yep, it was Dominic. Um, it was two 20-man units. Now, forgive me, Dominic, if this is incorrect, but I did hear from someone that was at Worlds. Um, but if you look at the list, uh, it sounded like there was Grimaldus was with one of them, and Helbert and the Lieutenant was with the other one, and the Judiciar was with the walking 5-man unit of Sword Brethren, which strategic reserved. So,
interesting.
so that's how they played that. Um,
Grand Enforcer says, "Do you think the next FAQ might change our Castellan, same price as the LT, with less power weapon attacks and no power fist?" Um, that's a possibility that he might go back down another 5 points because that was something with and this is what I was told from my source is I said, well, the LT is getting a 5 point drop. Is our Castellan getting a 5 point drop as well? And he said, no, the non codex chapters are not being touched. This is Space Marines only, which is stupid and doesn't make sense to me, but there we are. So I think that we could see him go down a 5 point drop because he does have less attacks than the uh, the other LT for some unknown reason. I don't know why. Um, and it's kind of like the Sword Bro in the Primaris Crusader squad mysteriously has less attacks than the Sword Bros in the actual Sword Bro squad. I don't understand that, but okay.
yeah, yeah.
Um, Alex says, need quote unquote need to nerf the Sword Brethren on top of the Impulsor. No, but they would do both. Potentially, that's GW. They're typically heavy-handed with their nerfs, although, as we've said, they've been pretty light on Eldar because obviously they're still at the top of the meta. Um, and then Big Rui Bard says, "Hey gents, late to the stream. Thanks for all the Templar content. You guys are legends. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate all the support you guys give us. So,
So I think like we're going to go into the detachments in general. Successful lists that have been the last few weeks, month, in each detachment and high placing for those that like to know that type of thing. And we're going to do deep dives into each detachment,
mhm. Even
what
the
to build,
crappy
how to
ones.
build. But what we're seeing in some of these lists, especially the world's lists, there's units that are really coming to the top of um, things. There's a lot of people that did not even take Lancers in their lists. I found that a little bit strange, but
Mhm.
um, a lot of double and triple uh, units of uh, Inceptors. And for those that know the self meme, I'm not going to go out and buy another 3 boxes of Inceptors after I finally sold off my stupid 6 boxes. I'm not doing it. Not doing it. Not
Have you
doing
let
it.
Inceptors into your heart?
No,
No.
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I
No,
don't
I
care.
haven't. They will
So,
never be in my heart.
So those are a very popular take for obvious reasons. You can get the plasma, you drop them in, do a ton of damage. They perform especially well in Firestorm. Um, but there's that. That basically is your anti-vehicle. Um, Scouts very popular. So if you've converted some, awesome. Um,
I have some old school scouts that are painted even. Can you believe
yep.
it, Bob?
Well, I do too, but I like new scale.
Well, I do too, and don't get me wrong, I am buying I guess the Kill Team box whenever it comes out with the 10 scouts in it. And I might even buy more beyond that. I don't know. I think I think what I'm going to do is I want to because I what I want the reason I want the new scale scouts is because I want to kit bash them together with neophytes to make some different poses for our neophytes so I can have 40 crusaders because there's only um, two poses for our current neophytes. There's the walking guy and the standing guy, and the scouts have a few different options. So I want to utilize those for some different poses. So yeah. Um, so that's my plan with those. And then I want to have so some of those will be neophytes, some of them will be scouts. You can really cross pollinate them if you need to. If you're not running that many crusaders, you can just grab some neophytes and put them in there. So I want to have like all the special weapon options. I want to build some shotgun neophytes because the shotguns that came on our upgrade sprue are really cool. So I want to utilize those, and now I finally have a reason to do so. And then if I needed to run a bunch of scouts, and I also wanted to run a bunch of crusaders, I have my old scouts as well. So
Mhm.
who I'll now consider them to be more like aspirants. Like they haven't gotten all the gene seed stuff yet or whatnot, so they're not quite as big as Primaris ones because they're little
Yep.
guys. They're so small next to Primaris. It's it's so funny. They look like humans.
So
uh,
other units that are really kind of popular, and I've kind of resisted doing taking them just because, but I might end up adjusting my list a little bit. But whirlwinds are very popular for similar reasons as the night spinner.
hmm
But you really shouldn't take just one. You really need two or more, three, to really make them most effective. Because one is not going to kill something by itself. So you need to have two to get enough damage through to kill that 5 units that's chilling on that home objective or hiding away, or
Yeah.
whether it be a character that's just super annoying, whatever that may be. But other than those few units, I feel like looking at the world's lists, there's a ton of variety. And I touched on it with TJ for those that watched. I feel like Black Templars are the most successful because we're the most adaptable
hmm
using our units. We can use any detachment practically and do well. I mean,
Yeah.
look at the variety. Righteous, one Righteous Crusaders, one Firestorm, two Ironstorm, two Gladius. So there's a ton of different things. Obviously, like Stormlance doesn't really bode well with our lists, or the first company is just absolutely trash. Um, but we'll try and make something work in our deep dive. And
We're gonna
then
do our
there's
best.
Anvil.
There'll probably be caveats of this is not a list we'd take to a tournament, but for casual games, you might do okay.
Yeah. So
So,
I mean, we can do it with the units that we have access to. Primish Crusader squads are really, really good.
well, and
Um,
something too, and
Firstborn are good.
I've touched on this before, but something that like just pleases me to no end uh, is that our unique units, the things that are iconic to Black Templars, Crusader squads, our characters. our sword brethren are all really good and fit into almost any list. I really like that because that's what makes us Black Templars is those unique units. Because when we're running a different detachment, we don't really have, you know, our vows or anything like that, right? So um, uh, those are the things that separate us from the pack is our unique units and the fact that they're all really good and perform on the table the way they're described in the lore is really cool to me. So ML has a question for us. He says, I just got a Land Raider Crusader yesterday. I worry that they are going to go Legends within the next edition. Should I return it? No, I actually don't see Land Raiders ever going Legends, to be honest with you. Um, Primaris and Gravis and whatnot can all fit in Land Raiders now, finally. And just like with Terminators, they made new Terminator models. Terminators need a ride. And the only thing that you can fit like larger squads of Terminators in is Land Raiders. So I do not see them ever legending our Land Raider units simply because of that reason that they have already basically made them viable for Primaris. But on top of that, the Land Raider is probably one of, if not the most iconic tank in all of 40K. Like you look back at the old art, the old pictures of armies, there's always a Land Raider. Always. Even the new army pictures, there's a Land Raider. So it is utterly iconic to 40K. It's not going anywhere. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, they may release a new upgraded kit for it.
They
I
probably
don't
will come
think
out
it.
with a new kit eventually. Yeah, because the one
Maybe it's upsized a little bit. Even though
it's
I
pretty
would
damn
say that
big
they
right
don't.
now.
It's big. It's big already. But
Yeah,
if you imagine having 10 Terminators in that, I know it's a game of abstracts and
yeah,
such,
yeah.
but when you
Well,
got 10 Terminators in the unit, or eight, really.
yeah,
It's still kind of stretching the imagination a little
yeah,
bit when you got the little teeny tiny tank in comparison to 8 Terminators. But
yeah.
yeah, um, you hope that the BT won't get nerfed. I hope so too. But I feel like if they don't nerf us and they nerf just the 3 or 4 that are above us, or really it's only like 2, and they nerf them and they don't touch us, then we're just gonna be way above everyone else.
So I'd rather take a minor nerf now than a major nerf later on.
Yeah.
That's my thought. Because the thing is if Black Templars specifically are nerfed and begin underperforming, because like we were maybe way overperforming and they went heavy-handed and nerfed us hard, and then you know, we suddenly are now underperforming compared to the rest of Space Marines and like below the Goldilocks zone. Honestly, I have a feeling that that GW is not going to do anything about it. They're not going to specifically unnerf only Black Templars. You know what I mean? Like, I could be wrong, but I just have a feeling that we'll get the attention for the nerf when we're above it. But if specifically we're below it, they're not going to do anything for us. So I'd
Now,
rather I'd rather take a
to
minor nerf
note,
now than a heavy-handed nerf later on.
well, yeah, go ahead.
Nope, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I would rather take the minor nerf. And honestly, we're not egregious like
No,
some of those others have been.
no,
So we're a few percentages above.
yeah,
Now, if we're being honest, a lot of our increased, even though Righteous Crusaders has done well, we've been performing at like 54 55% with the Righteous Crusaders, but really what's pushing us above on the win rates is the players that are influxed with the Firstborn, Crusader, Iron Storms,
yeah,
because it's a lot easier to run that list And you just point and shoot, point and shoot, point and shoot. You got a ton of rerolls, you got all that stuff. It's
Yep.
an easier list to run, especially for new players, than a Righteous Crusader list, which takes a little bit more finesse. And there's nothing wrong with running an Ironstorm. It's still an accomplishment to win a tournament. Let's be honest, because there's not a ton of people
And
winning
who doesn't
tournaments.
like tanks and dreadnoughts?
Yeah.
I love tanks and
Um,
dreadnoughts.
so that's a thing. But if they nerf the Firstborn Crusaders, give them 15-point hike, I think that will reduce it a percent, maybe two, on their win rates, which might put us into like a more healthy range.
Yeah.
Um, so
Because
that's
ideally
just me, and
we want to be towards the top of the Goldilocks zone.
yes,
So Tim says, dumb question. There are no dumb questions, Tim. The only dumb question is the unasked one. I'm new to the chapter. Is there any point in building a range-oriented Crusader squad, or are the points better spent somewhere else? I assume you're talking about Primaris Crusaders. Um, nope. You pretty much want to go melee for Primaris Crusaders. The reason being is they just don't do enough. Like the guns don't do enough damage. You know, output wise, for you to warrant that extra range. If you like the Pyre Blasters, there's a whole unit that's just Pyre Blasters. Run Infernus Marines instead. Um, I think that unit is worth running over a ranged Primaris Crusader squad. But like I said earlier, I don't know if you've been listening the whole time. Um, in your melee Primaris Crusader squads, take one, maybe two bolt rifles or neophyte firearms. And the reason is it gives the assault keyword, so that unit is eligible to shoot after advancing, which is important for secondary objectives. Um, but if you want to run a unit of ranged Space Marines, there are other units that are better for that. Stern Guard, Infernus, even regular intercessors. Um, the Crusaders, I think, should be melee. Now, Firstborn Crusaders, you want to run ranged because it's 65 points right now. 65 points for a uh, a las cannon, a meltagun, and a combi on the sergeant, or a plasma or grav pistol, or whatever you want to give him on the sergeant. Yeah, those guys want to be ranged because they're super cheap for 65 points for a las cannon, and then those other guns to boot on top is great. So um, that's our recommendation on those guys.
yeah, I think the scouts are going to catch a nerf too. Yeah, I agree, Vidokin, for sure. I think they're going to go up in points, at least just to 60, possibly to 65, because everyone is running them.
Yep.
I think it was widely accepted across the internet that when they first teased them that this unit was going to be ridiculously good. That's why we put them in S tier for our units in our tier list.
Yep.
Um, if you're not running them, it's just like, okay, you really have to have a good reason not to in your list.
Yeah.
Um,
They were
I
super
mean,
useful. I mean, they didn't kill a single thing in 4 games for me, but they scored me a ton of points, I'll tell you that. And, if they run up, score you some points, and then die, they did their job. It's 55 points. Even at 65 points, there's still going to be an auto take for me in almost every list because that's it's just cheap for what they do, and we need utility units like that. So,
yeah, the only reason why I'm not taking them in my main tournament list that I play competitively, well, I say tournament list, but I haven't been to one in a while.
how could you
But
not? You better have
my
a good reason,
competitive
mister.
list this next year, because I changed jobs, and this job, as I mentioned, is working me pretty bad. I inherited a broken store, but anyway, and I should be able to travel next year. Um, but I don't have the models, and I don't want to convert the models that I have with units that I know it's going to eventually come out, and I'll just put them in my list when the box comes out, honestly.
That's fair. I have the old models. I have a heavy bolter dude. I quickly kit bashed a missile launcher guy out of a sniper scout, so I have a missile guy. Um, yeah, when the new box comes out, I'm definitely going to be buying and building those. And like I said, I want
Yeah.
them for neophytes too. Um, so um, so yeah, Big Roo, he says, cynical me thinks scouts will go up after the kill team box comes out. Well, I think the kill team box is supposed to come out before the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
And we're gonna get a points update in January, so I would not be surprised if you're correct. ML says, okay, I'll keep the LRC then. What do you recommend putting in it? I was going to do 10 Sword Bros with Helbert and a Castellan. So you can do that. Is that the most competitive way to field them? Maybe, maybe not. It depends on the rest of your list. If you're doing that, you don't want other giant expensive units in your list. You want to diversify the rest of your list into small units that are cheap and expendable, like um, uh, what do you call it? Jump pack guys, scouts, even 10-man Crusader squads are fine. You want to make sure you have enough other units to compensate for that, and then you also want to make sure that you have things like lancers and other high damage dealing units that will take some of the heat off of that unit because it's gonna get focused on. For casual games and stuff like that, it's totally fine to do that. Other units that you can put in there, aggressors would be something to consider putting in there. It gives them a ride. They're a little slow,
Yep.
and it gives them some protection. And that's probably would be the alt unit that I would put in there is aggressors. Gravis takes 2 slots, right? I think, Bob.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
They
you
do.
could so in a Crusader hold 16, right? So that's 12. So yeah, you could fit a apothecary and uh, a 6-man aggressors in a Land Raider, right? I
Yes.
think that's right. Math's right on that. Yeah.
Yep.
So
So, and honestly, the aggressors are really good. I use a unit myself.
mhm,
I just think they're really adaptable. I talked about it a little bit. I put a biologist with T-bones with Boltstorm, and they basically just hold my center. They give me some guns that can lethal hit, and they got buffed to actually be pretty good in close combat, and they're durable with their Gravis stat line, and T-Bones give them the 5++ because I run uphold on everything.
mhm.
So I like them a lot. The high performing lists at Worlds, there was a few of them that did run aggressors. They did do uh, both units that I saw were the Flame Storm ones. Um, but one of them was in a Land Raider, so that's understandable. And then I think the other one I heard was being strategically reserved, so that the flames were useful.
So yeah. So Valentin says, as someone who hasn't kept up since ninth, what would the current fire support unit would you be running in a black tide list? In ninth, it used to be Eradicators and Las Eliminators. So I think it really depends on what detachment you're running. To be honest, in uh, in Righteous Crusaders, I mean, pretty much in any detachment, a good answer is always a Lancer, 2 Lancers, really. Uh, you know, but depending on your detachment, some units might be better than others. Um, Aggressors are a decent fire support unit, even though they don't seem like it, because you can give them things like lethal hits with the Biologus and, sort of ramp up their damage that way. Bob, what do you think? What are good fire support units for a Black Tide list?
So it really depends on what you consider Black Tide. Um,
I would say
are you
60
going to be
plus models.
full in? Well, okay, 60 plus models, but are you being infantry only Black Tide list, or are
Or are you
you
including tanks? Yeah, I guess
yeah, are
that's a
you
good
including
question there
tanks
too.
on it? So Lancers are always good. The Ballistus Dreadnought is really good.
Yep. Yep.
If you are willing to do Dreadnoughts on that. If you are
Redemptors
not,
are
you're kind of...
okay.
Yep, they're
They're a little pricey.
okay, but you get
A
ran
little
them.
pricey. Yeah. They're good in melee too, which a ballistus is not. So you do have that aspect of it as well. Um,
Yep. The Eradicators are fine. They do fine. You really do need to strategic reserve them though, to get to what you're doing.
mhm,
But honestly, Inceptors are probably the best anti-vehicle, most consistent, getting to where they need to. The plasma ones specifically,
mhm,
because they have the 3 damage, and there's quite a few shots. There's twin linked, so you're gonna get that reroll with those. So eradicators, if you're only infantry, eradicators and inceptors are probably your best bets.
mhm.
Um, if you're willing to expand a little bit, ballistus is really good as well. Lancers, but the lancer is a little bit more spendy. Um, so if you take lancers, you're probably not going to be able to afford it as much. So that's where I would go.
Yeah.
Nicholas asks, love the channel. What do you think about the repulsor? I think the repulsor is good if you want a cheaper alternative to the Land Raider and you need a lot of anti-vehicle guns.
You mean anti-infantry guns?
Yeah, anti-infantry guns.
Yep.
Yep, thank you. So it has a metric ton and it will do a ton of damage.
Yeah.
So it's a good way to get some stuff going. So
Tony asked, Lancers or Vindicators? Lancers. But why
yes.
not both? Because I have a list. My list we talked about earlier has 2 Lancers and a Vindicator. And that worked really well together. The Vindicators are a good bit more expensive, and they're shorter range. They're slightly more durable. They have a 2+ save, but the Lancers can literally just sit in your backfield and blast with that huge gun, and it does so much damage. The rerolls help them be really, really consistent. But the Vindicators are really good too. You can pair them together. That's my answer. Valentin says, I used to think Black Tide is infantry only, but these days I think it mainly means big Primaris Crusader blob spam. For me, I think it goes with the number of models that we're running, right? So lots of Crusaders. How many infantry models are we running in a list? That's kind of what I think of um, as Black Tide, because like for example, Marines are so cheap now that we can fit a lot of dudes our um, in our lists. So, for example, uh, my list that I ran, which is mostly MSU, has 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 55. It has 58 power armored models plus 5 tanks. So, 58 Space Marines is quite a lot. Um, so there is that. Um, I think in today's environment, if you want to consider yourself Black Tide, you probably need 65 plus Space Marines, and you can include tanks. Why not? I don't think you have to go all infantry because I don't know that all infantry is really going to work for us. You got to have some. The biggest guns are on tanks, and you need the biggest guns to kill their biggest guns, and they're hard to kill units. So it depends on how competitive you want to be honest. Thoughts, Bob?
Yeah, I would agree mostly, uh, as, as far as that goes. Um, yeah. Well, I kind of want a little circle around a tiny little bit. Would take some more questions if you got them on them, but
Yeah.
um, I just wanted to kind of finish my thought a little bit that I mentioned about the health of Black Templars.
Yeah.
Because that's what kind of the topic of this is. One of the things that like I feel looking at all the lists that were played out and they're being successful all of these different weekends because you know, we have the benefit of some helpful community members that post all of the lists out there that'll be successful and then in our Discord it I got a shout out to Baz
Yep.
for
It's one of
his
our
work
awesome,
in
awesome
compiling all the Black
moderators.
Templars. Yep. So he compiles them every week and shows the placings and are the lists for everyone, which it does take quite a bit of time. So thank you for doing that. It's a useful way of doing it. But if you're looking at all of these lists that we've been using, it really is important to note that we are adaptable. I've been kind of going over the YouTube channel and kind of just seeing what people like to run and that type of thing. And a lot of time I see the fluff reasons, Righteous Crusaders and that type of thing. I prefer Righteous Crusaders. I think it's the most adaptable way to play um, most armies. I don't feel like there's a hard counter on the board. I feel like Iron Storm, if you take Iron Storm, even though it's very powerful, you can face some armies that just really just roll over you. Um, Demons or um, Gene Stealers are a hard matchup. Chaos Space Marines. There's a bunch of matchups that are really tough to face in that detachment. But even still, there's a ton of armies that you can do. Everything is on the board for us, really, and we can be successful. I think that's like we're at the kind of perfect point. So when we get our codex, which sounds like we're not going to be next year, I would suspect we're going to be the year after. But they really only did like the roadmap through summer, so who knows what next back half of next year looks like. But I hope they don't change too much. So like the Space Marine Codex really didn't change a ton from the Index. I think we're
Yep.
very healthy in what the rules that we have. Make just a tweak here and there, and I think we're going to be golden. I love, whatever Discord that I'm on, whether it be ours or the other Black Templar uh, channel. I see lists, and it's just like we're starting to get really good with our list building, and I don't see any bad lists really anymore. So even like my Patreon, thank you for all that you do, the Sword Brethren and Castellans. I do list reviews, and the list game has been really upped. Now I try like the individuality. You want to keep a theme with them, obviously, but most of us are not playing at the worlds and hyper
Right.
optimizing all of our lists. But like if you're playing at a tournament at your local game store, I mean, you can we've gotten pretty good at doing it. So there's a lot of advice out there to what obviously the optimized things, but you can do so much with the different things. You want to go black tide, it'll be reasonably successful. If you want to have tanks, it'll be reasonably successful. Between the Space Marine, Codex, and Righteous Crusaders, I feel like we can do anything,
Yeah.
no matter what you want to do. And I love it. I think we're in a really good place.
Well, and
Hopefully we
just touch
catch
on. Go
just
ahead.
minimals.
Yeah. To touch on something that you said, our I feel like we've kind of begun to achieve what we set out to achieve with this channel, which was to increase our players' knowledge base, to build a community of people that help each other, that to get better, to play Black Templars better. And I feel like we've achieved that. Like our Discord has gotten big enough now where I can't keep up with every post anymore. Like especially in the list building section. But when I do go in there and I'm reading posts, um, it's I see the the existing folks helping new players, which is what we want, but not only helping those new players, helping them with good list ideas and the right tactical advice. and it's become self-sustaining at this point, which is awesome to see. And I'm really glad of the community and thankful of the community that we've built. It's such an awesome place. To talk Black Templars. I love how cool everyone is on our server. We've got almost 2,000 people on our Discord server, and with a server that size, we don't have we don't have any issues. Like our mod team is, there in case we need them, but they they don't have to use their mod powers very often
Yeah,
because we've built such an awesome community, because we've fostered the kind of community that we want to have, and I love to see it. And I'm so appreciative of everyone who participates in our Discord and who participates on our YouTube channel, and really builds this community, which is what our goal was, is to improve the knowledge base of our Black Templar players, and get more Black Templar players out there. So
yep.
yeah, thank you guys.
I'll jokingly say it because I know it's not true, but that win rate's all implausible nature.
I think
Totally joking.
I think
Totally
we've
joking.
had something to do with it. That's what I like to say. Truthfully,
Yep.
I think we have helped. So yeah.
Games
Um,
Workshop is going to nerf implausible nature.
right. Yep.
We'll take the hit for you guys. Just kidding. Just kidding.
But yeah, so we're just about out of time. If anybody has any last minute questions, fire away. But thanks everybody for joining us today. It's been fun. I'm glad I was able to share my experience with this list and some of the things that I were kind of eye openers to me. I talked a little bit about Bob won me over with the missile on the impulsor. Um, it's pretty good. I like it. So hard to go wrong with some missiles. So there's that, and some other things too. Really enjoyed the assault intercessors. Looking forward to getting my converted ones painted up, because I refuse to pay $60 a box for those guys. So instead, I have all these assault intercessors from Indominus, and I have all these unused magnetized jump packs from my Vanguard vets. Rip. So I was like, let's just make some assault jump pack guys, and worked out. So and then it was good. Worlds is this weekend. Something that I mentioned at the beginning, but we didn't really talk about. Bob, what's your thoughts on the new minis they revealed? All three units of them for 40K on Friday night.
I think there's going to be some. Well, the models are awesome looking, especially for Dark Angels. But I think there's a lot of conversion opportunities with the Terminators for Black Templars,
Yep.
obviously.
Yep.
I'm just hoping that because a lot of the iconry is on the shoulder pads, so hopefully those are not attached. They
I'm
typically
sure they
aren't.
are not, because the multi-part Terminator kit does not have attached shoulder pads. So,
Yep, yep. So they probably are detached. So that's going to be helpful. It'll make it a lot easier. Um, but and then the Storm Shield does have the Deathwing thing on there, so you have to scrape that off, but or find a different one if you can get those resin ones
mhm.
and just stand them in. But I think they're very flavorful um,
Yep. I'm looking for.
models. So
I'll probably pick up a box and try to convert them.
I'm hoping this starts a trend for other things and getting specific Black Templar Terminator unit. That would be excellent.
That would be excellent, although
Cough,
somehow
cough, cough.
somehow I don't know about that. We aren't known for our Terminators the way Dark Angels are. So,
But we
guess that
do
we'll
have a
see.
lot of void battles.
That's true. That's true. Ship to ship.
Yep.
Gary says, "Do you often do shoutouts for Army Painter comps?" Speaking of, we need to do another painting competition. It's about time of the year, isn't it?
We yeah, we normally do them in the spring and then the winter.
Yeah,
Haven't done one because of my
work.
work schedule.
We'll get around to it.
Yes, we'll get one.
Yeah,
But did you have a specific army painter competition that you're specifically referring to? Maybe.
maybe. So, yeah, the new Terminators, I like them. I don't think they're so loaded with Dark Angel's iconography that it's going to be super hard to convert them for us. My only sad bit is that they get swords. The swords are really cool. I've always wanted sword and board Terminators, and I seriously doubt anyone else is going to get them. So that's kind of unfortunate, sadly. But um, but yeah, he says armies on parade.
The Games Workshop.
Yeah,
I assume you put something in. Feel free to throw a link in. Got a couple
yeah,
moments while we're still in.
yeah.
So if there was like anything else, certainly drop them in here the next few minutes. So thanks for sticking around with us and
Yep.
watching. And I finally am starting to wake up a little bit, so that's good news.
Now that it's only, halfway through the morning. So,
Yes. But yeah, I think we're in a great place. We're going to do specific videos on detachments. We're going to do specific videos on uh, a series that I'm already starting to script on specific opponents. I'm probably going to drop in um, the most competitive opponents right now first. I think that's the way I should probably go on it, but I'll let the community kind of decide in our Patreon so they can get that. Um, some people have think that start at the bottom, the least competitive units, and then go upwards because the feeling is maybe they'll nerf the top armies and you won't see them, but we'll just see. Because I think Elder Eye is going to be an important one. Chaos is going to be important. Leagues of Votann. Um, some of those lists are going to be things that you're going to see. So I think they're going to be more relevant if you're at a tournament, even if it's just a casual one at your local game store. So I think that's where I'm leaning to starting. Um, so they'll take a lot of the little research, but that's going to be coming out soon because I think we're at the point where a lot of people have the basics down, and
yeah,
we really kind of have to start nailing down into what your opponent can do, and some at least soft tips on what to do to beat them.
yeah.
Um,
Yep.
and that
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for joining us. And be sure to check out our Discord if you're not already a part of it. Check out our Patreon as well. We have a lot of great Patreon benefits. We greatly appreciate all of our patrons' support. We couldn't do this without all of you guys, patrons and YouTube followers alike. So yeah, also check out baronofdice.com for all your dice needs. Lots of great deals going on right now for Black Friday coming up next week. So check him out. You can buy implausible nature dice from him. If you're a Patreon, you can buy specific Patreon implausible nature dice, which are awesome and rolled really well for me this weekend. Um, so yeah, until next time, guys, keep on crusading. Have a great rest of your weekend.